Thanks to Opera GX for sponsoring this video.
Nah, there's gotta be a way of turning pictures into profit. Huh? Hey, I just stepped into my best idea yet.
Oh, it's Kobe Bryant.
Look, it's the towers. They're falling.
Today we're going to dive into a bunch of these cases, with an iceberg chart created by Pen and Hex Studios and MetaRuner. So get some snacks, a cozy blanket, and relax as we dive into the media that predicted the future. Iceberg Explained. But real quick, before we get into the iceberg, let me give a quick shout out to today's sponsor, Opera GX, the best gaming-inspired web browser on the market. But it's not just for gaming. Opera GX offers a ton of customization options to make the browser fit your needs. Using GX mods, you can make Opera GX into any kind of web browser you want. You can change the background music, the keyboard typing sounds, opening and closing tab sounds, the theme and color of your browser, dedicated wallpapers, and even more. And you can even quickly enable and disable mods from the sidebar, all available from the GX store. I mean, there is an incredible amount of options to choose from here, but one of the biggest things for me personally was the amount of resources that Google Chrome was wasting in comparison to Opera GX. Like, not only is Chrome using more than Steam, but it's also using more than 6 times the amount of RAM that Opera GX is. You can also quickly and easily import all of your settings from Chrome or any of your other previous browsers, including history, bookmarks, and cookies. So if you want to check out the most customizable and fresh web browser there is, then make sure to use my link in the description or the pinned comment and download Opera GX today. Thanks again to Opera GX. Now back to the video. Tier 1. The Simpsons predicts Trump's presidency. This is quite a popular one, and one I've discussed I think a few times on this channel, if I'm not mistaken, but in a 2000 episode of The Simpsons titled Bart to the Future, Bart has a vision of Lisa becoming the president after Donald Trump. However, this prediction isn't as crazy as it seems, because according to a Snopes article on this topic, Trump had been playing around with the idea of running for president starting around 1999. But they didn't just do it once, but twice, because in a 2015 episode of the show, there is a sign reading Trump 2024. But the big one that people talk about are these two side-by-sides of Trump during his 2016 campaign, and an alleged episode of The Simpsons which was said to have come out in 2000, although this isn't actually from Bart to the Future or any real Simpsons episode, but rather a YouTube animation made as a parody of the real-life event. Looney Tunes cartoon predicts 9/11. Prepare, because there are going to be a ton of alleged cases of pieces of media predicting 9/11. In fact, it's color-coded as a category on the iceberg itself because it happens so often, along with predictions of the pandemic, of course. But anyway, this one is from a 1949 cartoon called Often an Orphan as a part of Merry Melodies, a companion series to Looney Tunes, with this episode featuring Charlie and Porky, and, well...
What's that? Look! It's the towers! They're falling!
Yeah, this one is pretty self-explanatory, and pretty eerie knowing what we know now. Although one of the theories is that this was possible commentary on the end of the radio era in America, which around this time saw a bunch of the out-of-date radio towers being taken down, hence the towers falling and all that. Simpsons 9/11 magazine. Here's another pretty insane coincidence. Released in 1996, an episode of The Simpsons called The City of New York vs. Homer Simpson aired, and in it we can see a magazine at multiple instances, in which New York is depicted with the Twin Towers in the background next to a price tag of $9, which is close enough to the towers that it looks like it spells 9/11. Even the writers acknowledged this as one of the craziest coincidences in foreshadowing real-life events that they've ever had. But the Simpsons showrunner and writer Al Jean also said about all the things they've predicted on the show, quote, "If you write 700 episodes and you don't predict anything, then you're pretty bad. If you throw enough darts, you're going to get some bullseyes." Regular show predicted NFTs. the first of our NFT predictions, everyone's favorite scam. A bit of context to this one, in the episode But I Have a Receipt from Season 2, Mordecai and Rigby, CoffeeZilla style, expose a scam related to a board game called The Realm of Darthon, which is a poorly put together game, which also has these images of characters that are all the same and just have different stats and costumes. Essentially a crypto NFT scam before those even existed. Death Stranding predicted self-isolation. So this is one of those related to the pandemic, the one we all know, but I don't think YouTube likes me to say the name of, but you all know what I'm talking about. And let's just say Kojima, for all his insane writing, has a penchant for predicting a lot of future events, as you'll come to find out throughout this iceberg. And this one is in relation to people self-isolating during the pandemic in order to try and stay safe and avoid getting sick, which is kind of similar to the plot of Death Stranding, which came out pretty much right before the start of the pandemic in late 2019, because in the game, after a post-apocalyptic event, which is the namesake of the game, most people that are still left alive stay isolated from one another and communicate through holograms, and it's only through the work of the protagonists, Sam Bridges, and the other porters that people are able to reconnect, literally by building bridges. It's definitely an interesting connection. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance predicted Trump's slogan. Already got a Metal Gear one here, but actually funnily enough, Kojima did not write Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, and in fact had minimal involvement, but the prognostic nature of the series still remained in this spin-off released in 2013, as Trump's presidential slogan for his campaign would be used by the fictional senator in the game.
The weak will be purged, and the strongest will thrive, free to live as they see fit. They'll make America great again! What the hell are you talking about?
Sadly though, Trump did not actually take the slogan from the final boss of Metal Gear Rising, as funny as that would be, but rather the slogan was used way back in the 80s by Ronald Reagan. Demolition Man predicts pandemic. Another subtle social distancing hint found in the movie Demolition Man, released in 1993, which focuses on a futuristic Los Angeles taking place in 2032, now called San Angeles. But according to this clip here on YouTube, we got not only the social distancing, but also chip implants, now a real thing with Neuralink, and the toilet paper shortage as well, all in one clip.
While you were sleeping, everyone in the city was installed code. It was a brilliant idea by Dr. Cocteau that an organically bioengineered microchip be sewn into the skin.
You're out of toilet paper.
Did you say toilet paper?
We are not used to physical contact readings.
Not to mention in the rest of the film, there's also self-driving cars, voice controls, and FaceTime. Quite ahead of its time with a lot of these predictions. SpongeBob predicts Google Chrome. Okay, this one basically speaks for itself, not much to comment on this. Just so happens that the SpongeBob animators happen to draw a ball with the same color scheme as Google's web browser, or it was a paid advertisement. No, but on the real, it's not even the exact same colors, it just looks very similar. South Park predicts Beyond Fried Chicken. In the 7th episode of the 21st season of South Park, titled Doubling Down, we get Cartman having some Beyond KFC, which actually ended up becoming a real thing with their Beyond Fried Chicken. This isn't even close to the craziest prediction on this list, as more and more companies around the time of this episode being released were getting into the impossible/beyond plant-based meat alternatives. Back to the Future 2 predicts Cubs winning the World Series. The Back to the Future movies are already known for having some good and not so good predictions of what the future would look like, and it's kind of the point of the films, time travel, but one particular instance is quite well known and talked about. That being in the second film. It predicts in 2015 that the Cubs would win their first World Series in 100 years. It was against a fictional Miami team at the time called the Miami Gators, which don't exist, although the Miami Marlins would later become a real Major League Baseball team. However, the World Series were not won by the Cubs in 2015, but rather the Kansas City Royals, although they did win in 2016, funnily enough. The Simpsons predicts Disney buying 20th Century Fox. Another one from The Simpsons, what do you know? This one is from a 1998 episode which shows the 20th Century Fox logo, but alongside it, underneath it, it says a division of the Walt Disney Company. Curious because the decision of the acquisition was announced in December of 2017, like 20 years later. Likely though, this isn't due to some crystal ball, and rather talks of this kind of acquisition have probably been happening for many, many years, hence why this was included in the episode. Megamind predicted Queen Elizabeth's death. Here's something that happened not that long ago, but again, it's not that crazy given how old the Queen was at the time of Megamind's release in 2010, as she would have been in her mid-80s. However, as we know, she lived into her mid-90s, passing in September of 2022. But also, the scene that this is referencing isn't even much of a prediction at all.
There is no Easter Bunny, there is no Tooth Fairy, and there is no Queen of England.
Sharknado predicted Hurricane Ian. Sharknado is a cult film, one of those so bad it's good types, released in 2013 about a unique catastrophe in which sharks are carried out of the ocean and into Los Angeles as a result of a water spout. And it sounds ridiculous, right? That insane concept is one of the many reasons people like the movie. Well, unfortunately, it might have been a little too accurate, as in 2022, Hurricane Ian, one of the deadliest Atlantic hurricanes ever, would strike, leading to devastating circumstances including severe flooding in places around Florida, which actually caused situations in which whole streets were flooded to the point that there were sharks swimming in downtown Fort Myers, which is just the stuff of nightmares. Tier 2. Three-eyed fish is real. Getting back to The Simpsons already, well, remember this image I showed you? Well, look at this tweet here attached to it, and this comment. Jokingly, someone wrote, "So now what? The three-eyed fish should wash up on shore any day now, right?" Clearly saying this is a joke in reference to the character Blinky, a three-eyed fish from the show which was mutated by the Springfield nuclear power plant. I mean, surely this didn't happen in real life, right? Oh. Of course! Even the backstory is consistent, as this image was captured of a three-eyed fish caught by a fisherman in Argentina near a nuclear power plant. Deus Ex predicted the 9/11 attack. So this is the big one that everyone points to with this game, and at first it makes a lot of sense. I mean, the game tackles terrorism directly, and if you look out into the New York skyline, you won't see the Twin Towers, because in-universe the towers were destroyed in a terrorist attack. Keep in mind this game released in June 2000, a full year before the devastating September 11 attacks would take place in real life. One of the most chilling predictions of 9/11 for sure, but it seems there might be an explanation behind this one. It's been stated that they made up this backstory about the buildings being destroyed in a terrorist attack, not because this was their vision and they somehow knew the future, but because of memory limitations. More specifically in regards to the amount of textures they could have in the game, so it seems they removed the distinctive towers in order to have a repeatable texture that they could use for the skybox. And there's something else that I forgot to mention until now, that being that predictions of the World Center being involved in such attacks aren't really all that crazy or speculative, at least post 1993, because there was a largely unsuccessful attack that took place that year, which is much less known because it did not even come close to causing the same amount of harm as the infamous 2001 attacks. So just keep that in mind as we look into more of these, because trust me, there's a lot more to come. Deus Ex predicted the government response to a pandemic. This is a much lesser known prediction, despite it being a major plot point of the game, which is that a lethal pandemic happens with a disease called the Grey Death that destroys the world's population, and a synthetic vaccine is created but is hard to come by and is only given to those society deems important, leaving the more common people to just die out and leading to riots and social unrest around the world. This isn't really exactly how the recent pandemic went down, and I suppose at first vaccines were a little harder to come by, but now it's pretty easy to get vaccinated. Although one thing is for sure, it did definitely lead to a great divide among people, especially in America. Although besides that, as far as I can tell, there aren't that many similarities here between the viruses and situations. Granted, I haven't actually played the original Deus Ex yet. It is on my backlog, so hopefully I'll get to it one day. Metal Gear Solid 2 predicted fake news. Not just fake news, but also the rise of artificial intelligence, fake voice synthesizers, misinformation used to politically divide people, unmanned military weapons, I mean, the list goes on and on. But today we're tackling the misinformation or fake news aspect, which is a major theme of the game. And to really get into it here, I'm gonna have to get into some spoilers for one of the best games ever made, so if you don't want to be spoiled, skip to the next entry. But basically this game turns everything on its head, and it's so mind-bending and confusing narratively that by the time the game ends, you don't really know what is real and what isn't. And that's definitely intentional and very much a part of the experience. But the most notable sequence in the game is the one where Colonel Campbell, your guiding voice throughout the game, is revealed to be nothing more than an AI who gives one of the most chilling speeches in gaming history, which is now more relevant than ever. Keep in mind this game came out in 2001.
And this is the way the world ends. Not with a bang, but a whimper.
Okay, so just pause the video for a second. I've been trying to upload this video all day and I keep getting copyright claimed by some like random SoundCloud rapper claiming to own this MGS2 AI codec call, despite it being from a video game cutscene from 2001. So sorry, I can't actually play the audio here. So yeah, just go look it up on YouTube, or better yet, play MGS2. It's a great game. And yeah, sorry about that. Back to the video. Planet of the Apes trilogy predicts pandemic. As pointed out by a CBR article, there are a few similarities between the fictional simian flu disease, which is a pandemic inside of the Planet of the Apes remake trilogy, and of course the disease that, you know, shall not be named. I'm sorry, I know you all know what I'm talking about, but I'm not sure if YouTube really likes me saying it out loud, but you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, in the films, this pandemic of the simian flu spreads, which leads to the apes kind of taking over, right? Well, in a city in Thailand in real life during the recent pandemic, a bunch of monkeys invaded the city of Lopburi? I know I'm getting killed for the pronunciation on that one. But basically there was a monkey invasion due to them not being fed by tourists, because of course tourism around the world plummeted at this time, which can be seen in some videos that actually went viral on Twitter. Ed Edd n Eddy predicts NFTs. This is one of my favorites. You likely saw this in the intro, and when I saw this clip I was shocked, but at the same time not really, because Ed Edd n Eddy are the greatest scam artists who ever lived. Of course they came up with NFTs before they were a thing. Truly pioneers of their craft. Can we get a CoffeeZilla episode on these guys, by the way? A full expose. I mean, you heard it right here. Turning pictures into profit. And we get a look at a f***ing ape. I mean, I guess the Bored Ape guys were fans of Ed Edd n Eddy. I don't know what else to say about this one. Sure, yeah, the episode is really about selling calendars, but come on, the coincidence here is still funny, you have to admit. South Park predicts Nathan Phillips. So this is referring to a scene in South Park in which a Native American man is attacked by Stan Marsh while wearing a Christopher Columbus outfit and holding a globe, telling the guy to get off his land, while some other dude records it basically. This was a holiday special released in September of 2017, and it's claimed here, I guess, that this predicted the real-life Native American activist Nathan Phillips, who is known for being involved in a 2019 Lincoln Memorial confrontation. However, according to his Wikipedia page, he was a well-known Native American activist that participated in protests that took place in 2016 and 2017 before the episode actually aired. Also, random fact, he appeared in the music video for the Skrillex song Make It Bundem, and I had no idea this song was so popular. I honestly just remember it from that mission in Far Cry 3 where you burn down some dude's weed farm. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs predicts Nikocado Avocado. Now that's a wild title for an entry. Mostly though, this is just a joke as far as I'm aware, referencing the character in the film Mayor Shelbourne, who bears some resemblance to Nikocado. VeggieTales predicts modern humor.
In the future, entertainment will be randomly generated.
Randomly generated?
Randomly generated! What better way to achieve the unexpected?
CBDBD dop dop, yeah yeah. CBDBD dop dop, yeah. CBDBD dop dop, yeah yeah.
Yeah, don't need to say any more about that one. Futurama predicts pods. This one happens in the very first episode of the show, the pilot of Futurama, where the main character Fry encounters Bender waiting in a line for a booth, which Fry thinks is for making a phone call, but is actually a booth. The scene is actually really funny and one of the best character introduction scenes ever, honestly. But apparently in Switzerland, assisted pods are actually being 3D printed, believe it or not, known as the Sarco device. However, as you probably all know, means of euthanasia have been around for quite a while and are actually a very common thing to be found in fiction. Family Guy predicts Caitlyn Jenner.
I can't believe that came out of Bruce Jenner's.
Bruce Jenner is a man.
No, Brian. That's what the press would have you believe, but he's not. Bruce Jenner is a woman.
A 2009 clip from a Family Guy episode can be seen which seemingly predicts the male to female transition of celebrity Bruce Jenner, who later became Caitlyn Jenner. This, as well as a few of the other celebrity predictions, have been attributed to Seth MacFarlane and the other writers using Hollywood gossip and rumors from the time and putting them in their episodes, which sometimes ended up being true, like another time where they hinted at the dark past of Kevin Spacey. South Park predicts Miley Cyrus's downfall. It seems a 2008 episode of South Park entitled Britney's New Look may have predicted Miley Cyrus having some adversity in her career, a downward spiral as it were, which would take place not long after this episode aired.
Hannah Montana's Miley Cyrus, though only 15 years old, is already on her way to being a major superstar. Looks like next harvest will be even better.
Johnny Bravo predicts 9/11. This is another big 9/11 one that people point to, which can be seen in the episode Chang'e Johnny, released not even a year before the attacks on April 27, 2001. In fact, only mere months before it, in which in the background you can find an ominous poster that reads "Coming Soon" alongside a burning tower. Although again, this is likely just a coincidence. I mean, there were so many pieces of media affected by 9/11 back then. Like, any mention of explosions or airplanes and towers were getting censored in some way. But I will admit, knowing what we know now, it is pretty eerie to see. Biggie's Juicy predicted 9/11. This time, the Notorious B.I.G. song Juicy came under scrutiny, and like I mentioned earlier, this is one of the cases of post-9/11 censorship, with a few lyrics of the song being removed. The lyrics read, "Now I'm in the limelight, cause I rhyme tight, time to get paid, blow up like the world trade." Keep in mind the song released in 1994, and Biggie himself tragically passed away in 1997, well before these attacks took place. However, of course, in February of 1993, there was that bombing at the World Trade Center, and most of the time the song remains censored to this day on the radio. The video game Donkey predicts Kanye sampling the fucking... For his 10th studio album entitled Donda, released in August 2021, Kanye West included a track called Remote Control, which sampled a strange animated film called Straczynski and the Mysterious House, which made its rounds as a meme due to this clip.
Delightful. Really delightful. I'm the Glub Gabgara. I love books. And this basement is a true...
Now, even more interesting is the YouTuber video game Donkey seemingly actually predicted this in a video titled Donkey Leaks Donda, which released a few days before the album dropped, and had a track which sampled the whatever, you know what I'm talking about. Diary of a Wimpy Kid predicted NFTs. Now yes, as you're probably thinking, selling expensive pictures in itself isn't exactly predicting NFTs, but you gotta admit these instances are funny given the new context. I mean, I doubt anyone could have actually predicted something as insane as the rise of NFTs. It would just seem like satire, like it couldn't be real. But here you have Greg Heffley from Diary of a Wimpy Kid trying to pay for a $100 dinner with a picture. If only I could go to Olive Garden and just bust out my Bored Ape and transfer it to the waiter to pay for my dinner. Throw him a little Dogecoin as a tip. Tier 3. Legends of Chamberlain Heights predicts Kobe Bryant's death. This one is crazy, one of the most unsettling coincidences in this list.
It's Kobe Bryant!
Help me.
About 4 years before the tragic helicopter crash that would kill Kobe Bryant, as well as 8 other passengers, including his own daughter, there was an episode of the Comedy Central cartoon Legends of Chamberlain Heights, released in 2016, which had a chilling scene in which it depicts Kobe Bryant being in a helicopter crash. Out of respect to Kobe, his family, and the rest of the passengers, this segment was removed from the episode, although it can still be found on YouTube. Gadget's niece invented the iPad before Steve Jobs. Inspector Gadget is a 1980s cartoon which featured a lot of off-the-wall and insane gadgets, hence the name. A lot of futuristic tech, but a lot of it doesn't even seem very practical except for a few cases, such as a device similar to an iPad or e-reader, an electronic computer book which Gadget's niece uses and even connects to her printer. Guess they didn't know about Bluetooth back then. Honestly wish I could just plug my printer in like that, but nowadays everything has to be connected to the internet and be more complicated than it needs to be. But getting off track, this computer book isn't very similar to the iPad at all, really. I mean, it's a literal book, like with pages, but it's cool, I guess, you know, despite how outdated it looks. At least we can look back on these things knowing technology advanced far beyond people's imaginations in the 1980s. So maybe the sci-fi and futuristic fictional stuff of our time might not be so far off after all. South Park predicts the Omicron variant. Not that crazy of a prediction here, but one nonetheless, which can be found in the South Park post-COVID special, which talks about a new variant, with the episode being released in November of 2021, before the more infamous variants were discovered, such as Omicron. However, there were many other variants discovered before this point, such as Delta or Alpha.
It's a new variant, the COVID Delta Plus Rewards Program variant. Everyone, please! We cannot panic!
Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon predicted Russia invading Georgia. What do they say? Art imitates life? Well, this time it's the other way around. You know what, I honestly should have started the video with that quote. But either way, it looks like Russia took this to heart, as during a fictional conflict in 2008, which is portrayed in the 2001 title Ghost Recon, so in the future from when this game was made, a conflict occurs where Russia invades Georgia, a bordering nation, not the US state. And it just so happens that in the real 2008, Russia did just that. I know that probably sounded confusing the way I worded that, but I guess maybe Putin is a fan of Ghost Recon. Lone Gunman Episode 11 predicts 9/11. Here we go again. A TV spin-off series of The X-Files, first released in 2001, which, little known fact, was co-created by Vince Gilligan of all people, and apparently predicted 9/11 just like every other piece of media ever conceived. And this all happened in the pilot episode, which dropped in March of that year. The plot involved a group of corrupt arms manufacturers hijacking control of an airplane remotely and using it to attack the World Trade Center and blaming it on terrorists. Yeah, so not exactly what happened, allegedly, but probably the closest to any of the ones on this list, to be honest. The Cat in the Hat predicted the pandemic. Mostly again just a meme coming from this clip.
Mr. Holmes, I wanted to thank you. Fired. I beg your pardon? Fired.
Not much else to say about this one. The Simpsons predict Siegfried and Roy getting attacked by a tiger. Siegfried and Roy were a German-American duo who were known as entertainers who utilized lions and tigers in their acts. One could already foresee where things could go wrong here, which is exactly what one episode of The Simpsons predicted, as the tiger attacks them in the middle of a performance during an episode. This isn't exactly what happened in real life, however there was an accident that took place during a live show in 2003, involving the white tiger who attacked one of the performers, Siegfried, and actually bit him in his neck after knocking him off his feet and started to drag him across the stage before the tiger trainers were able to step in and get him off of him. Siegfried, also known as Roy Horn, did manage to survive the attack, although his spine was severed and he was left permanently impaired. South Park predicts the death of Osama bin Laden. Again, this is something that probably a lot of people could see coming, but either way, South Park, less than a year before it happened in real life, predicted that American Special Forces would find and kill Osama bin Laden, which is exactly what happened, although not the way South Park envisioned, obviously, but not even the South Park writers could have predicted that Osama was a Naruto and Devil May Cry fan. Didn't know he was chill like that. Simpsons predict the Higgs boson. So this one is a bit above my pay grade here. I have no idea what I'm talking about when it comes to God particles and whatnot. Bruh, I talk about lost media and edgy games for a living, give me a break. But apparently the Higgs boson, or the Higgs particle, was proposed by a physicist named Peter Higgs in 1964, and it wouldn't be proven until 2012 using CERN's Large Hadron Collider. But apparently in a 1998 episode of The Simpsons, Homer writes down a math equation which is almost identical to the calculation of the mass of a Higgs boson. At least that's my understanding of this. The Coup Party music album art predicted 9/11. Well, this one is pretty self-explanatory, I think. Apparently though, this album was poised originally for a release in September of 2001, if you can believe it, before the album was delayed until November, I think for pretty obvious reasons. Not to mention with a completely different cover. And despite there being quite a few alleged 9/11 predictions on this iceberg, this is definitely one of the most chilling ones for sure. Die Hard box art. But we're not done with the 9/11 box arts just yet, because we got the Die Hard one. Not just the box art, but the whole story involving terrorists bombing a tower. Kinda reminds you of something, doesn't it? However, the story isn't really all that like the actual September attacks. Plus, the story takes place in a skyscraper in Los Angeles and not New York, and doesn't even feature airplane hijackings. Still, some believe the cover, which released alongside the film in 1998, evokes imagery of the 9/11 attacks. But now that I'm looking more into this, maybe this is actually talking about the games, specifically the NES one, which makes it look like the tower is actually two different towers, similar to the World Trade Center. Godzilla vs. Megalon poster. And here we have another similar case, but this time with the 1973 Japanese Godzilla film titled Godzilla vs. Megalon, which has both monsters fighting atop different skyscrapers, battling in the sky with explosions all around them. I guess any depiction of two towers equals 9/11 at this point, although I guess this is actually the American poster of the film, and these are actually supposed to be the Twin Towers, despite them not actually appearing in the movie. Just a creepy coincidence, I guess. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Stardust Crusaders loosely predicts 9/11. I like that this one gets loosely attached to it, as opposed to any of the other ones. I guess that's because this certain character who has the numbers 911 ends up being dead in a graphic manner in the third part of JoJo. Spoilers, sorry. But I'm pretty sure this is like a random nobody character if I remember right. But this panel is extremely brutal, so I'm pretty sure I have to blur this, but shout out to Araki, man. This guy has no chill. Homefront predicted the death of Kim Jong-il. Homefront is a first-person shooter released in 2011 that kind of flew under the radar, which features a story revolving around resistance fighters in America as it is under occupation by North Korea. And at the time the game was released, Kim Jong-il was the leader before being succeeded by his son, Kim Jong-un, in 2012 after his death, which the game actually predicted. In fact, they were only 2 weeks off of his real death date. It's not that crazy to predict his death itself, as he was suffering from various health issues at the time, but getting the date that close is pretty crazy. I Am Legend predicts Batman vs Superman. This one is more like just a fun Easter egg, because in the 2007 post-apocalypse film starring Will Smith, there can be found a poster for a Batman v Superman movie, which of course ended up coming true. However, this isn't all that crazy, considering many people were trying to get this film made for years, even before I Am Legend was made. Even a producer on this film, Akiva Goldsman, had written a cancelled adaptation for Batman vs Superman that was meant to release in 2004 before it was scrapped. Gravity Falls predicted Doki Doki Literature Club. Now, would you believe me if I told you that one episode of Gravity Falls predicted two of the most popular indie horror games of our generation? You probably wouldn't, or maybe you would, because yeah, this entry talks about Doki Doki Literature Club, a horror visual novel which blew up overnight, that is seemingly somewhat predicted, you could say, in this episode. But there is also this. Yeah, what does this remind you of? This came out around the same time as the first Five Nights at Freddy's, but since it takes a while for episodes to get produced after they're written, it's safe to say this was in production before the very first FNAF game. Ponyo predicted 2011 tsunami in Japan. The 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami was one of the most destructive natural disasters ever to take place in Japan. In fact, it was the most powerful earthquake ever recorded in the region and led to untold billions in financial losses and led to the deaths of almost 20,000 people. And did 2008's Ponyo, a cutesy Ghibli film, predict this catastrophe? Well, the movie does feature a big tsunami. However, the consequences of this are not as dire as the real thing would be. In fact, it's more of like a magical tsunami that summons all these magical sea creatures, so no, it didn't predict the 2011 disaster. But after it happened, understandably this film was seen in a much different light and was pulled from air, similar to media involving planes and towers after 9/11. Garfunkel and Oates predicted Ye's downfall. I like that they call him Ye here. But yes, in 2009, a comedy duo called Garfunkel and Oates did a bit called Who Said It? Kanye or Hitler? I suppose that title alone, as well as the actual special itself, well, speaks for itself really. It's still on YouTube with almost 10 million views now thanks to recent comments made by Kanye.
We have a list of quotes, and half of them were said by Kanye West, and half of them were said by Hitler. Who said which quote?
Come Together predicts John Lennon's death. So here we have one where it's theorized that someone predicted their own demise, that being in the Beatles song Come Together. I mean, the Beatles songs have a ton of different conspiracies, you know, the Revolution 9 stuff, the whole Paul is dead thing, you know, with him allegedly dying and being replaced by a lookalike. But here it's looking at a 1969 track, Come Together, from the album Abbey Road, where John Lennon whispers the words, "Shoot me," in the song, which is creepily prophetic as he was murdered by a crazed fan in 1980. Apparently he even told reporters that he wouldn't live past 40 or that he would be shot by a loony one day. Both of these things sadly turned out to be true. Lilo and Stitch deleted scene loosely predicts 9/11. Like I said earlier, a lot of media was affected by 9/11 and had to be changed after the attacks. Lilo and Stitch is just one of these examples. A particular scene involving a 737 plane crashing through a city was changed to be an alien aircraft, and instead of in a city, it's seen gliding through mountains. Some sequences were even cut out entirely because they show the inside of the airliner. Matrix loosely predicts 9/11. Another loosely situation, and I guess just every piece of media pre-2001 predicted 9/11, and with this one it's hard to even find out what's exactly being referred to here. However, there is this creepy coincidence of Neo's license expiring on September 11th, 2001, which is kind of eerie, but that's really all I could find on this. Back to the Future 2 predicted TikTok overstimulation content. So this is a pretty funny way to end off this tier, but again, I'm not exactly sure what this is talking about, but yes, Back to the Future did predict a lot of stuff, including digital currencies, social media, VR, holograms, a bunch of stuff, right? But with this one, I think this might be referring to a TV found in the second film, which has multiple screens, which I guess is a prediction of those TikToks and YouTube shorts where there's like Family Guy clips and podcast clips next to Subway Surfers just casually melting kids' brains as they scroll, but maybe that's a stretch. I don't even know if that's what this is referring to. Let me know if there's another instance in this film. Tier 4. South Park predicts Jared Fogle being a In Season 6, Episode 1 of South Park, released in March of 2002, there's an entire episode called Jared Has AIDS. In the episode, they parody Jared's infamous Subway commercials, and the plot even revolves around him getting fired from Subway as their spokesperson. This was all before he was exposed for being a child predator in real life, leading to his arrest following an FBI investigation in 2015. The Simpsons predicts Bengt Holmstrom winning the Nobel Prize. It's kind of uncanny how many things The Simpsons predicts right, but it's even more interesting when they predict things in the scientific community, although maybe it doesn't come as too much of a shock, given that the writers knew about the Higgs boson. Still, in 2010, an episode of The Simpsons sees some characters trying to guess who would win the Nobel Prize, and among them was Bengt Holmstrom, a Finnish economist, who would end up receiving the Nobel Memorial Prize in Economic Sciences in 2016. The Wreck of the Titan predicts the sinking of the Titanic. Now, this is definitely interesting given how long ago this happened, and yet still a novella entitled Futility, released in 1898 and later published as The Wreck of the Titan, explores a fictional ship called the Titan, said to be the largest ship in the world and virtually unsinkable, which of course sinks after hitting an iceberg in the Atlantic Ocean. Very similar circumstances to the Titanic tragedy of 1912. Even the name was similar, just 2 extra letters. Spaceballs predicted canned air. Wait, didn't SpongeBob predict this too, or am I tripping? Oh wait, no, I'm dumb. It was canned bread. But also, I thought they've been selling canned air for a while now. Like those compressed air cans you use to clean stuff. Remember that Gamer Gunk guy? The Gamer Air version?
Gamer dudes and dudettes. When it comes to keeping your gaming gear at peak performance, oh, the games people play. I'll tell you. Really?
Either way, apparently Spaceballs did it first, but it wasn't like that kind of air, it was the kind you breathe, which I guess they also sell now. The more you know. Command & Conquer Red Alert 2 predicted attacking the Pentagon and the Twin Towers. Well, that's one way of describing another 9/11 one. Command & Conquer Red Alert 2 is a real-time strategy or RTS game released in October of 2000, a year before the attacks, and depicts a Russian invasion of America, including New York, where the Twin Towers are actually visible in gameplay as part of the map. But even more interestingly, the original cover art of the game shows a war-torn New York along with the Twin Towers in the background as a plane bombs the city. But also, even more interestingly, honestly, the expansion pack, which prominently featured a Soviet campaign attacking the World Trade Center, was meant to release in September of 2001 before it was delayed until October because of the attacks. The Pentagon is also attacked in the game, but this isn't that notable really, as it's the command center of the US military and an obvious target for a foreign military invasion. Dream Theater's Metropolis 2000 Scenes from New York original album art. Released by the band Dream Theater in 2000, their third album entitled The Live Scenes from New York originally had a different cover that was changed shortly after release, not only because it depicts New York and the Twin Towers in flames, but also because the album released on September 11th, 2001, making this first edition of the album very rare, as it was pulled from shelves not too long after for obvious reasons. Contagion predicts pandemic scams. Contagion as a film itself essentially predicted the pandemic through and through, essentially every aspect of it. The film released in 2011 and was shockingly accurate to what would take place in the early 2020s. A couple details were different obviously, but overall it was pretty accurate, including a plot point in which a famous conspiracy theorist claims they were able to cure themselves of the virus using unique treatments, which in the end ends up all being a scam, and leads to the man being arrested for securities fraud, as the claimed elixir had no effect on actually curing the illness. A classic snake oil salesman, a tale as old as time, and honestly the least shocking prediction of the movie. These kinds of practices have been around since people have existed. Spy Kids predicted Apple Watch. A lot of pieces of media have predicted smartwatches and gadgets like that at this point, if we're being honest. Also, from the images I've seen of the smartwatches in these films, they're a lot more bulky and less practical than real smartwatches. Still, I mean, they kind of look cool, I guess. Perfect Dark predicted an African American president. Perfect Dark is another piece of media, a game that was said to have predicted a lot of future events, including the US having a black president. The game takes place in 2023, but it was made in 2000. Does he look like Obama? No, not really, but it's the thought that counts. The Simpsons loosely predicted Batman vs. Superman. Another Batman vs. Superman one, really? And it's The Simpsons again, who would have guessed? This was a little harder to find exactly what this was pointing to, really, but I did find a scene in which two kids were wearing a Superman and Batman costume and were fighting, but this was around the same time that the film came out, and like I said, people have been trying to make this film for a decade by this point, so maybe this is referring to another scene. I'm honestly not really too sure. Transformers ROTF predicts Shia LaBeouf's mental decline. So as most people know at this point, the actor Shia LaBeouf has quite a few times in his life gone through some mental health struggles, and it's suggested by this entry that the 2009 Transformer film, Revenge of the Fallen, predicts this, as there is a scene in the movie in which his character, Sam, has a mental breakdown in the middle of class.
Break down the elemental components of energy on assume constant K rating, extrapolate reach of the 14 galactic convergence took the Sentinel Prime expedition receiving echo on a signal. You wind up with a formula for interdimensional energy creation, mass I only can't possibly explain. Come on, guys, I can't be the only one.
Come Fly With Me predicts Avatar 2. Again, not exactly a prediction, but it does have a character called Taj calling Avatar 2 the best film ever, before it was even made, in a show that was released in 2010, and the sequel for Avatar wouldn't come out until 2022, so yeah, very long wait. To be honest, I never thought it would actually release, but back then the first one had just came out like a year prior. Doctor Who predicted AirPods. Not only does Doctor Who feature wireless earbuds very similar to that of Apple AirPods, which would release a decade after their first appearance in Doctor Who in 2006, but they were also even called EarPods. Yeah, not much else to explain on this one, other than, you know, shout out to the Doctor Who writers, or did Apple just like the idea? Who knows. Tier 5. Mercenaries 2 predicted the Venezuelan government seizing American oil rigs. A fairly specific prediction coming from a game you probably haven't heard of, because I sure never have. Mercenaries 2 is a third-person shooter released in 2008 for the Xbox 360, PS3, and even the PS2 in 2008. The game focuses on the protagonist, known as the Mercenary, on a quest of vengeance to kill the fictional president of Venezuela and overthrow the government. About 5 years after the game released, the Venezuelan government would actually seize American oil rigs, just like what happens in the game, as 3 of these oil rigs are actually main set pieces. Thankfully, this happening in real life didn't lead to a much larger global conflict as it does in the game. Grab the Child, Many Child to Collect predicted the worst groomer on the internet. Yeah, this one definitely has some irony to it. No predictions here, unless you count you predicting yourself to be a groomer, in which case I guess the Roblox user known as ma_bucket did successfully predict that. I don't really know anything at all about Roblox. It's not a game I grew up with, thankfully, but from what I looked up, it seems this game mode ended up being very popular, called Grab the Child, Many Child to Collect, before it was deleted in January of 2022. The premise is it's like a gacha game where you collect these children, as they're called, in order to sell them and buy more. And I have to show you this trailer, not only because it describes and shows the game, but the pure irony of it as well.
Buy a capsule and see what's inside. It's a lonely child, hey, what a surprise. Put him in a box or buy some friends. With so many children, the fun never ends. Grab the child, many child to collect. Grab the child, many child to collect. It's an awesome game by yours truly. I don't get unreal child cruelty. Grab the child, many child to collect. Grab the child, many child to collect. It's an awesome game by yours truly. I don't get unreal child cruelty.
Yes, as it turns out, the creator was, well, let's just say he might have been trying to play this game in real life. Hence all the videos on YouTube exposing him as Roblox's worst predator. Yikes. Prince predicts 9/11. Who didn't predict 9/11 at this point? That should be the better question. But allegedly, again, it's kind of hard to find info on this, but according to this YouTube video during a Prince concert performance in 1998, he says, quote, "Getting ready to bomb and Osama bin Laden getting ready to bomb. America watch out in 2001. Now, obviously, if this really happened, it's definitely interesting, but from the recording I found, it's only audio and kind of hard to make out. Plus, I'm not exactly sure when this was recorded, but allegedly it was on December 23rd, 1998 in a town in the Netherlands. Make of it what you will, I guess. American Dad predicts Paul Walker's death. So this says American Dad predicted Paul Walker's death, but what I actually found was that most people actually point to it being Family Guy, as there was an episode where the character of Brian Griffin, the dog in the family, is killed in a tragic and brutal car accident, which was strange for a comedic cartoon. And a week later, the actor Paul Walker also died in a brutal car accident in real life. But how are these related? One's a cartoon dog and the other was a beloved real-life actor, known for playing a character in the Fast and Furious movie series about street racing, where he played a character named Brian O'Connor. Is this a prediction? No, just a sad and disturbing coincidence. Rampage Universal Tour predicted 9/11. To be honest, this one is just another example of the World Trade Center being destroyed in a game prior to the attacks, although in this case, in the game Rampage 2 Universal Tour released in 1999, a lot of other different world landmarks can be destroyed by the monsters in the maps, including the White House, Sears Tower, and even the Chrysler Building. Makes a lot of sense considering it's a game where you play as monsters terrorizing and destroying cities. Bay's Transformers predicted GM killing off Pontiac. Spoiler alert, I guess, but in the 2007 Transformers film, a character called Jazz, who is also a Pontiac car, is killed by one of the villains in a pretty brutal way, as far as the death of robots go. And I guess this iceberg interprets this character's death as the prediction of the death of the car brand itself, the Pontiac, which the parent company General Motors discontinued in 2010 after the great financial crisis that took place a few years prior. Serj Tonkin, Border Czar music video predicts the Mexico-USA border wall. The lead singer of the rock band System of a Down released a music video for his single Borders Are in June of 2010, which shows a map of the world with the borders between countries slowly being removed from the map, until one final border remains, the Mexico-US border, which some see as a sign of what was to come, with the increasing tensions regarding the southern border, and even possibly a prediction of the Mexico border wall. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Stone Ocean predicts Alexander McQueen's. So this one is actually really sad. A JoJo character from part 6 named Thunder McQueen is a minor antagonist appearing in Stone Ocean, inspired by the real-life British fashion designer Alexander McQueen. At least the wiki says that's his namesake, who has a stand called Highway to Hell. Explaining stands to somebody who's never seen JoJo is kind of hard, but basically it's a visual manifestation of someone's powers. Anyway, this character's was called Highway to Hell, inspired by the AC/DC song, as most stands and characters in JoJo are inspired by music. A disturbing coincidence is that his stand's power allows him to attempt to kill himself, which will then make someone else die in that same way, which is sadly ironic considering his real-life namesake ended up ending his own life in 2010, shortly after the death of his mother. Over the Hedge predicted Karens. To be honest, Karens have always existed in society. We just didn't have a name for them until fairly recently. But I don't really have to explain much here. I mean, Gladys Sharp really was the proto-Karen archetype. I mean, there's an entire 4-minute compilation of it on YouTube.
Did I just hear them say, rabid squirrel? Vermin running loose, spreading disease, and lowering our property values?
Gotta run.
Fine.
You worry about your casserole, and I'll worry about the end of suburban peace and tranquility.
Amy Winehouse predicted her own death. So this isn't really a piece of media here, but rather a celebrity again predicting their own death, with Amy Winehouse telling her friends that she would be a part of the 27 Club, in reference to a list of musicians and celebrities who all died young at the age of 27, including people like Kurt Cobain and Jimi Hendrix. She struggled with alcohol and substance abuse, which unfortunately did lead to her tragic passing on July 23, 2011 at the age of 27 from alcohol poisoning. Earl Hancock Ellis predicts war in the Pacific. Yeah, so again, this is another early prediction, but also not a piece of media. I guess we're really kind of bending the rules this deep in the iceberg, but this is referring to a Lieutenant Colonel Earl Hancock who served in World War I, and 20 years before World War II predicted a war in the Pacific against Japan, having also died under mysterious circumstances in May of 1923, which some believe was because he was assassinated by the Japanese military. Regardless, in 1920 he predicted that Japan would strike first against America, but would ultimately end up losing the conflict, which is exactly what happened. Tier 6. Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri predicted human genome mapping. This one again, as far as I'm aware, isn't much of a prediction, as Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri, released in 1999, was much after the Human Genome Project began in 1990 and was ultimately completed in 2003, although the final gapless assembly of the genome was finalized in January of 2022. Still, the hard science fiction title does see researchers sequencing the human genome, and this takes place in the far future of 2145. Dean Ambrose predicts pandemic. So I really don't know a lot about wrestling or the WWE, but from the picture shown on this tier of the iceberg, we can see it is referring to the wrestler Dean Ambrose and his gas mask, which him and his team showed up in on December 3rd, 2018 for his entrance.
Now, I need these measures not just to protect me from you people and whatever diseases you may all be carrying.
Lex predicts the Higgs boson. Again, some of these are definitely questionable on this iceberg, but I guess the show Lex, or Lex the Dark Zone Stories, or Tales from a Parallel Universe, whatever you want to call it, was a Canadian science fiction parody series which aired for 4 seasons and 61 episodes. And the series finale of the show concerned scientists using a particle accelerator to determine the mass of the Higgs boson particle, only to destroy Earth in the process. Whoops. Shadow the Hedgehog predicts pump-action rifle. In 2017, Kalashnikov Concern, the largest gun manufacturers in Russia, revealed a bizarre pump-action version of an AK called the KSZ-223. A strange hybrid between a carbine and a shotgun, I guess, because of the pump. I don't know, this thing is kind of just cursed, but what's even weirder is Shadow the Hedgehog somehow predicted it. Not entirely, but in the intro of the game, Shadow pulls out a weird pump-action rifle, which was definitely not a thing as far as I'm aware when the game released back in 2005. And in reality, this isn't even actually a pump-action rifle at all, but more like a pump-action MP5, which is honestly probably even dumber. Jax Films predicts Chris Pratt voicing Garfield. I don't even have anything to add to this. Roll clip.
Now where could my pipe be? Jesus. December 2022. Can't come soon enough. Okay, let's make Chris Pratt the new voice of Garfield. Would that fix it? I hope I never find out.
The Sixth Day predicted self-driving cars. The Sixth Day is an American science fiction film released in 2000, which takes place in the future of 2015, and makes quite a few accurate predictions about what life would be like a decade and a half after the film came out. They had facial recognition software, something our phones have nowadays, ordering groceries online, video calls, and even self-driving cars, which are not very advanced even today, but they do exist and they work. Kind of. But that's not even the craziest prediction here, honestly. A lot of sci-fi stories get that one right. They also have animal cloning in this movie, which is actually a reality nowadays. We live in a crazy world. Tier 7. Angry video game nerd predicts toilet paper crisis. Yeah, it seems a lot of these lower entries are more so just jokes, right? But here we have a clip from the AVGN, from an episode on the Tiger Electronic Games, which, side note, might be my favorite episode. At least, I was gonna say it's my favorite of the modern episodes, but the thing came out like 10 years ago, which is insane. Wow, I feel old right now. Anyways, in the episode he says this.
The only thing I can think of to use these things for is to wipe your ass with it! You might as well save that toilet paper. It's worth a whole lot more.
Internet historian, anybody? Of Mice and Men, band predicts Ohio chemical accident. So I'm guessing this just comes from the fact that the band Of Mice and Men have a song titled Ohio is on Fire. But none of the lyrics really point towards this conclusion, and none of the comments on this song were really talking about this, so maybe I'm wrong here. The event being referenced here is obviously the train derailment that took place on February 3rd, 2023 in East Palestine, Ohio, as the train was carrying a lot of hazardous materials which leaked into the air, including hydrogen chloride and phosgene. A large fire was also started due to the chemicals and train derailment, which I suppose you could stretch the song to say it's predicting, but I don't really see it, honestly. Black Mirror predicted ChatGPT. Black Mirror is another piece of media which is known for predicting the future. Not in a tongue-in-cheek kind of way like The Simpsons usually, but this is an anthology series created by Charlie Brooker, which usually is set in speculative dystopias, mirroring our reality, hence the name Black Mirror. Usually each episode's setting is different and provides a different piece of commentary on some sort of social or otherwise interesting issues and scenarios. It has covered themes on AI, and sure, it's a given, really. I mean, people have been talking about the danger of AI for like 30 years at least at this point. However, what's more interesting is that the creator, Charlie Brooker, tried to use ChatGPT to write an episode. I guess likely as a piece of commentary in and of itself, a meta-narrative if you will, but it didn't really work out as it was, quote, shit, and didn't have any original thought, which makes sense given what we know about generative AI, essentially taking what already exists and just reshaping it. Tier 8. Black Mirror predicted the British Prime Minister a pig. And getting back to Black Mirror, we have this. What an entry title, by the way. No way this is true, right? Right? The very first episode of the show is titled The National Anthem and revolves around a member of the British royal family being kidnapped, and in order for them to be released, the Prime Minister is forced to have sex with a pig on live TV. Insane plot, right? This could never happen in real life, is what you would say, until a few years later. Piggate. In 2015, a biography was published on then Prime Minister David Cameron, which alleged that during his years at university, he had put his in the mouth of a dead pig during an initiation ceremony. Apparently, you can't make this stuff up. What the Radiohead predicts Ice Age movie. Another joke here. I mean, someone pointed out in the song Idiotech, released in 2000, the lyrics, Ice Age coming, 2 years before a movie called Ice Age. Predictive programming, I see. Frank Ocean predicted Fortnite.
You what?
I'm guessing this is just another joke entry. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell with these sometimes. Anyway, on a Earl Sweatshirt song featuring Frank Ocean released in 2013, he says, whoa, Fortnite? No way, bro, my man was playing Save the World. Okay, but for real, what's hilarious is I looked up the real word, you know, spelled night, like as in nighttime Fortnite, right? And it asked me if I mean Fortnite the game, not the real word, which actually refers to a period of 2 weeks. I guess it's fine though. I mean, this word is forever done for. I mean, never actually using this in a sentence ever. Not that I've ever felt the need to. I mean, I'll just say 2 weeks. Whatever, this turned into a weird rant. This video is falling apart in these later entries, I'm sorry. X-Forts predicted pandemic and the social media impact plus deniers. This one is actually very specific and links back to a video from JoJo YouTuber X-Forts released in 2018. And I gotta say, clearly whoever made this iceberg, huge JoJo fan. But anyways, about 15 minutes into a stand contest results video, he describes this.
And if you're on Twitter or Instagram or anything like that, the stand can inject things into your timeline, and when you read it, you will believe it as absolute truth no matter what. So either like, you know, a famous politician or just someone famous has passed away, or there's like a virus outbreak in your country, or there's a zombie apocalypse, whatever the stand decides to inject into your timeline, you will automatically accept that as truth. So I really liked American Idiot. It was
Archduke Franz Ferdinand's car predicted the end of World War I. What? Okay, I gotta say, great one to end on. Most people know that the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand was one of the inciting incidents of World War I, at least directly. And this event has a bunch of oddities to it, such as with the infamous sandwich that put the assassin in just the right place at the right time to kill the Archduke and start the war to end all wars. But also, strangely enough, Ferdinand and his wife were traveling in a car at the time which had the license plate AIII118, which some interpret as Armistice 11/11/18, the date in which the war was ended, and the agreement was signed, November 11th, 1918. Pretty spooky coincidence, if you ask me. Or is it? And that about covers it. What do you guys think? Did any of these pieces of media accurately predict the future? Were these all mere coincidences, or is something bigger going on? Let me know your thoughts down below. And any other instances of a piece of media seemingly knowing what would happen in the future that weren't included on this list. But that's about it from me. It's been me, Source Brew. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thanks again to OperaGX, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.